Nasreddin Hodjer, a beloved figure known for his wit and wisdom, lived in a small, bustling village. He was respected not for his wealth or status, of which he had little, but for his sharp mind, kind heart, and the way he always found humor and lessons in life's peculiarities. One day, a wealthy merchant in the village decided to host a grand feast. The event was the talk of the town, with everyone eager to attend. This was no ordinary gathering, it was a display of wealth and status, where the elite of the village and neighboring towns would flaunt their finest clothes and boast of their successes. Invitations were sent far and wide, and one such invitation reached Nasreddin Hodjer. When Nasreddin received the invitation, he chuckled. He was not a man to be impressed by wealth or social prestige, but he also believed in experiencing life's moments fully. Why not, he said to himself. Perhaps there's a good story waiting for me there. On the day of the feast, Nasreddin dressed in his usual attire, a simple, well-worn robe, patched in places but clean. He believed a man's worth was not in what he wore but in how he treated others. The feast was held in the courtyard of the merchant's grand mansion. The place buzzed with activity, servants scurried about carrying platters of delicacies, musicians played cheerful tunes, and the rich mingled, laughing and sharing stories of their accomplishments. Nasreddin entered the courtyard quietly, unnoticed by most. His modest clothing made him blend into the background amidst the glittering silks and embroidered robes of the wealthy guests. He smiled politely and found a corner to observe the spectacle. Their host, a man known for his flamboyance, noticed Nasreddin but did not recognize him immediately. Seeing his plain appearance, the host assumed he was a beggar who had wandered in uninvited. With a dismissive wave, he turned his attention back to his more distinguished guests. As the feast began, platters of steaming food, roasted lamb, fragrant rice, stuffed vegetables, and exotic sweets, were brought out. The servants first served the guests wearing the finest clothes, offering them the choicest dishes. Nasreddin watched as others were served with great ceremony, while he was ignored entirely. He chuckled to himself. He thought, so it is not a man's character but his clothing that matters here. Quietly, Nasreddin slipped away from the feast, unnoticed by the host or guests. He returned home and opened a trunk where he kept his finest robe. It was an elegant garment, embroidered with gold thread and adorned with a fur collar, a gift from a wealthy friend long ago. Nasreddin rarely wore it, finding little need for such finery in his simple life. Donning the splendid robe, Nasreddin returned to the feast. This time, as he entered the courtyard, all heads turned toward him. Their host, recognizing the fine garment, rushed forward with a broad smile. "Welcome, esteemed guest," the host exclaimed, bowing deeply. "Please, come and sit in the place of honor." Nasreddin was guided to the best seat at the table, where servants hurried to serve him the most exquisite dishes. The other guests nodded approvingly, acknowledging their important man now among them. Nasreddin, ever the observer, accepted the food graciously. But instead of eating, he did something that left everyone in stunned silence. He picked up a juicy piece of roasted lamb and began feeding it to the sleeve of his fine robe. "Eat, coat, eat," he said, as if addressing the garment. The guests exchanged confused glances. Whispers spread around the table. "What is he doing?" one guest murmured. "Has he lost his mind?" another wondered. Unable to contain his curiosity, their host approached Nasreddin. "Hodjer," he said politely, though with a hint of annoyance, "what are you doing? Why are you feeding your coat?" Nasreddin looked up with a twinkle in his eye and a wry smile. My dear host," he replied, "it seems that when I arrived in my simple clothes, I was invisible to you and your guests. No one offered me food or even a kind word. But when I returned in this fine robe, I was treated like royalty. Clearly, it is not I who am the guest here, but my coat. So, I am feeding it, for it seems more deserving of your hospitality than I am." The courtyard fell silent. Their host, embarrassed, turned red. He realized the truth in Nasreddin's words and how shallowly he had judged his guests. The other attendees, too, looked down at their luxurious clothes, suddenly uncomfortable. They had been so caught up in appearances that they had forgotten the value of kindness and respect for all. The host bowed deeply to Nasreddin. "You are right, Hodjer," he said humbly. "I have been a fool to judge a man by his clothing. Please forgive my behavior, and allow me to serve you properly." Nasreddin smiled warmly. "There is nothing to forgive," he said. "The lesson is learned, and that is what matters." Their host, now determined to make amends, ordered his servants to serve all guests equally, regardless of their attire or status. He also invited the villagers waiting outside the courtyard to join the feast, sharing the abundance with everyone. Nasreddin, as always, ate simply and enjoyed the company of people who laughed and learned together. The feast, once a display of wealth and vanity, transformed into a celebration of equality and community. The story gives a lesson that the people should be valued for who they are, not for their appearance or wealth. True respect and hospitality come from recognizing the worth of every individual, beyond their outward trappings.